Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So I'm going to finish up my roundup of GT7 in 2023. Now, yes, I do know it is 2024 now. This video is a little bit later than I originally planned. So happy new year to each and every single one of you. I hope you do have a wonderful 2024 ahead of you. Now, in this video, I'm going to go through every single update that came to GT7 in 2023 to see if it managed to thrive and absolutely smash it out of the park, or if it kind of fell down, flopped and just kind of failed. So the way this video is going to work, I'm going to go through every single month of the year of 2023 to see what went on inside GT7 for that month. Now, looking back recently at my sort of 2022 roundup to see how the game performed for that year, in all honesty, it was a very mixed bag. There was some absolute banger updates and some absolutely terrible ones, and to be totally honest, I feel like we're going to see a same situation here. So let's start off with January. First month of the year, what did we get? Yeah, we got nothing in January, so let's move straight on to February. So the first update of the year finally did drop, and it was an absolute banger. This was the long-awaited PSVR 2 update. Obviously, VR2 came out along the side. Obviously, the GT7 update. There was a bunch of updates for current games, but one of the most long-awaited was GT7, and we all kind of waited to see what was going to happen with this. Would it be a solid game mode? Would it be completely change up the game? And I'd honestly say yes. It was very unlimited in comparison to what we saw in the likes of GT Sport, where it was kind of its own mode. The entire game was pretty much open up for VR2. Alongside that, we also got our first tests against Sophy. If you remember back then, we got our kind of, I guess, alpha test of her, so there was a bunch of different difficulties on track at the same time. It was sort of a limited time event. We obviously had the brand new track in the form of Grand Valley Highway 1. Now, again, I would say this is perhaps the downside of this update. They kind of took a much loved original track with a bunch of nostalgia for it and then completely changed up how it looked and felt, and to be honest, I've never been the biggest fan. The cars themselves, most of them was solid. We had the likes of the 911, the Citroen DS, whilst it was painfully slow, was absolutely a stunning model, and obviously we got the legendary Honda RA272, but then we also got them awful VGTs that had little to no real things about them. We got the street mode and off-road mode of the Ital design VGTs. They had no in-car view. It just seemed a little bit of an odd one, considering we got the VR2 update at the same time. So overall, the first update of the year was absolutely fantastic. It really gave the game an entire different way to play. I know a lot of people were really on edge about how limited is this mode going to be, and then we all kind of got our hands on it, and it was just absolutely fantastic. I think still to this day there's people that will just not play GT7 unless it's in VR, and it is perhaps one of the, I guess, best VR2 games that is currently available. It was a fantastic update. There was some really cool cars. Grand Valley Highway 1, whilst it did kind of ruin the nostalgia for me of Grand Valley, was still the perfect track to come along. It was insanely detailed, some absolutely stunning vistas to look at, and I honestly cannot fault it. I feel like it was kind of the perfect track to come alongside the update, even if it did kind of mean sort of butchering a nostalgic amazing track from all the way back in the days of GT1 on the PlayStation 1. So February, definitely a great update and one of the biggest, if not the biggest, of the year. So if we disregard January as a complete throwaway month and, polyphony just getting back to normal, February was a banger. So let's move into March of 2023. Would that momentum carry on and go forward? And I would actually go on to say, yeah, weirdly enough, I actually felt while this update was a lot smaller in size, they always do feel like that way when we come off the back of a massive update. We did get some solid things in this update. We had the likes of the Porsche 959, the old Carrera GTS. We even had the meme itself, the Toyota Alphard, 120 FPS support, which for me, I really liked it, although visually it does take a massive knock. We had the Audi DTM, which was a massive car to come to the game, obviously sitting in Group 2, and we also got 2 new track layouts. Whilst the events that came alongside this update weren't really that fantastic, I do feel like those new track layouts alongside some absolutely great cars, as well as the meme itself, was absolutely superb. To be honest, this really really wasn't a bad update, a lot smaller in scale though compared to February, so it did seem like the momentum was definitely moving forward for Polyphony, at least in the early beginning part of 2023. So for me, if we kind of again disregard January, February and March were absolutely fantastic in terms of, you know, getting momentum and getting players back to the game after the kind of, you know, dry spell from the end of December, and obviously January being such a long month without an update. So let's move on next to April. So far we've had 3 months and 2 fantastic updates, obviously not counting January because there wasn't one in there. So all updates so far of 2023 were fantastic. Moving into April, and I felt like the momentum did keep going that way. We had a fantastic lineup of cars this time around. We had the brand new Super Formula SF23 come to the game. This was the first time we've ever seen it in a video game. Obviously Polyphony getting the partnership with obviously the Japanese motorsports and stuff to get these in the game absolutely on point. It was great to see that Polyphony can get these licenses and can get cars like this in the game. We also saw the likes of the Jaguar XJ220, which was definitely a car, or at least a road car, a lot of people were asking for. And finally an updated Group 3 model in the form of the Mercedes AMG 2020, obviously, you know, taking the sort of evolution of the original vehicle that we saw and making it a lot better and a lot more up to date. And to be honest, I felt like this is where the momentum was definitely heading in the right direction. Polyphony were absolutely nailing it. For me, the cars of this update absolutely carried it, although we did get a new menu book for the SF23, which was okay and did provide some longer races. Definitely in terms of the content we were getting, it was absolutely superb. You know, we had the VR update, we'd had some solid cars, we'd had new tracks, but May came around, and for me this was really where the downturn started to happen. Whilst all good things must come to an end, I felt like the May 2023 update was definitely one of the weaker ones of the year. I felt like it was definitely heading in a completely different direction now. We'd had massive momentum with brilliant cars, VR and all that kind of stuff, and May kind of rolled around to be perhaps one of the weakest of the year. We did get the GAC Maverick, which was absolutely bizarre and has provided some amazing engine swaps across the board, but in terms of features, this one was just absolutely lacking. The R32 Nismo just felt like a bit of a kick in the teeth and felt like a bit of a copy paste job. Don't get me wrong, it is a completely different car, did have some unique visual mods to it, but it definitely didn't differentiate itself enough. The Giulia obviously is an absolute stunner, but again, not necessarily a car many people were asking for. So for me, May just felt like a complete drop off a cliff after some fantastic momentum towards the start of the year. So definitely towards the midpoint of the year, we did start getting some of the weaker updates that we'd seen of the year, and May was definitely one of those points. There really just wasn't that much to this update, if I remember. I remember the events being done and dusted very, very quickly, you know, at least with the likes of April, February and stuff. It just felt like there was a lot more to do. So moving into June, how did this update go? So June of 2023, this was definitely a chance for the momentum to come back to GT7, but I think for the majority of players it really didn't. For me personally, I didn't mind this update. I thought the car selection was actually very, very good. Again, in terms of the events, it was very, very weak. In fact, I think this was perhaps one of the weakest months in terms of the events, but the cars themselves, you know, we did have the Aston Martin Valkyrie, which was a car that a lot of people were kind of asking for and hinting towards that we need more, I guess, modern hypercars in the game. So we did kind of get that wish granted in the form of the Valkyrie. In terms of the Impreza, I know there's a lot of JDM people out there or rally fans, so again, like me, I absolutely loved the inclusion of the Impreza. Same with the Evo 3, I really didn't think much of that. However, that did end up actually being my car of the year for 2023, but certainly in terms of the overall opinion of the update, this was definitely not really a big update. There really wasn't too much there to take away from the June update. There really wasn't that many changes across the board. You know, again, a lot of the momentum was starting to, I guess, trail away at this point. There wasn't many people kind of sticking around. We'd had the VR update and stuff like that, and we definitely needed something to boost us up. So July rolled around, and what did we get with this update? Well, yeah. So nothing happened in July, but we did get the release of the Gran Turismo movie for August. So surely this would be the month where, you know, things picked up and they celebrated that GT movie like no tomorrow and made a big deal about it, and we get a ton of awesome cars. But no, sadly not. August was absolutely terrible, and I think this for me was the massive sort of, I guess, momentum killer for Gran Turismo 7, and I think for a lot of players as well. You know, we got cool cars like the High Medic and, you know, obviously the Corvette C1, but the fact is we were also getting advertised the Gran Turismo GTR, which was just a livery swap, and people had already made that for months on end before it even dropped. You know, it was just an absolutely terrible time. The events were weak. The celebration for the release of the movie, which should have been a big deal, was terrible in the form of a time trial using a reskinned car. The fact that they tried to make out this was like a whole new model and such, yeah, it just wasn't a great time. And for me, this was perhaps the worst update of the year, especially on the back of a whole month completely gone with July and no update, and then previous to that, 2 relatively average updates or poor updates at best. I think for a lot of people at this point, not seeing them celebrate the Gran Turismo movie more and make a big deal about that with special events and stuff and only doing a time trial, August just felt like the biggest kick in the teeth to the majority of the fan base, and I kind of agree with them there. Like I said, for me this was the absolute momentum killer. This one was really kind of where I was sort of rethinking, do I carry on supporting this game, do I carry on making content for this game, you know, or kind of, you know, do I drop it? And I even made a post about it. Now let's move on to September. Surely at this point things are going to start picking up. You know, surely we'll maybe have something around the, you know, movie a little bit later down the line, but no, once again it was a fairly average update. Now don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the cars from this update. The most up-to-date Civic Type R coming to the game, a car that a lot of people had asked for. The final of the SEMA Award winners in the form of the RCR Garage Civic, which was actually quite surprising, and we did get a new race car in the form of the Mazda 3 Group 4, but you know, I don't think really anybody asked for that. It did turn out to be a fairly okay car, but I'd say definitely in terms of what other Group 4s we could have wished for, the Mazda 3 Group 4 really wasn't it. Again, very light on update, and if I remember rightly, this was the one where they were making a big deal around scapes and stuff, and again I think a lot of people were just really losing patience at this point. I just felt like this update could have been good maybe towards the earlier part of the year, but kind of dropping it on the back of, you know, a poor month and very weak updates and little to no celebration around the movie or special events coming to the game, this update really kind of dropped. It is better, don't get me wrong, than the likes of the August update, but really not by much, and it just felt like the timing of this update really didn't help things in the long term for GT7. So let's move in to October of 2023. So another missed month off the back of absolutely terrible updates. November needed to be special, and well, it definitely was. Finally, we got the Spec 2 update. It was absolutely massive. It was game changing. It was fantastic. Was it perfect? Absolutely not, but definitely a massive update, and definitely the way that GT7 needed to head. You know, we had the likes of Sophy AI, we had a new track, we had UI changes to game modes, a ton of events. It was absolutely massive. The biggest update that we've ever had to GT7, even topping that huge VR update at the beginning of the year. This was a fantastic update. The cars alone were absolutely superb in terms of road cars coming to the game. There was a bunch of them that were obviously on the leaked car list that finally all came together in one. We had the likes of the 400R, the 190E, we had the likes of a new up-to-date Porsche, obviously with the brand new model. We did obviously have the terrible Tesla, which we won't talk about, which was perhaps the only downside of this update, but it was massive. So we did start the year with a massive update, and we did end the year with a massive update. Obviously this was actually the final content update even to this day, and there will probably be one coming in January, I believe, alongside the new VGT. But you know, in terms of ending the year, it was just absolutely superb. Again, it wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong, but the content that was here was enough to keep players going, and you know, I wish it could be like this every month. It was just absolutely brilliant, to be honest. There really was some good stuff here, and it did kind of feel like, you know, okay, we missed October, we was on the back of a few poor updates, but finally they did deliver. So yeah, November and Spec 2 update, fantastic way to end the year in terms of GT7 content updates. So overall, what was it looking like for the year for GT7? Well, we started off with a fantastic update after missing January. There's a few missed months in between. We did end up with kind of the mid-year slog, which was really bad in terms of, you know, dropping off players and stuff and people just not wanting to come back. But then it was almost like it got fully revived at the end of the year with the Spec 2 update. So it really was a much better year than 2022. Was it perfect? Well, no, of course not. And to be honest, we could have done without that mid-year slog of really poor updates. But overall, it was a solid year, finalized with the November update. But we did still have one more month to go, and obviously that is December of 2023. Obviously we can't miss this one out. So for December we did get some cool sort of in-game stuff going on. However, in terms of content that came to the game, so overall, how was 2023 for GT7? I would say it was a much better year than 2022. So obviously the game released in March of 22, and it felt like a lot of that year was, you know, catching up on essential things, you know, things like putting the selling cars dealership in. There was a few fairly weak updates. 2023 though definitely added in features that, you know, the majority of the players wanted from day one, and obviously built upon that as well. We had VR come to the game on launch. We obviously had the likes of buying and engine swaps and stuff like that. We obviously had the massive Spec Up 2 update, a couple of new tracks and stuff. I would certainly say that 2023 overall was much better than 2022. However, that middle of the year kind of slog that went on, we could have definitely done without. But overall, a much more successful year. I don't know what 2024 holds for GT7. Hopefully it carries on, you know, the momentum of the November update. Hopefully we do get some absolutely incredible updates this year. You know, I'm assuming that things may start slowing down now, obviously after Spec 2. You know, maybe they'll be planning on their future work or cracking on with that mainly now. Obviously with the likes of maybe GT Sport 2, GTA, obviously they've probably been in the works already for years. But, you know, I think this year we'll definitely see them probably turning their focus to those games more than GT7. I certainly think it's definitely in a much healthier place. If I were to start the game now, day one, I definitely think that, you know, I'd be in for a much better experience than we all did in March of 2022. So 2023, solid year for GT7. Could have done without the middle of the year slog. Let me know what you thought of the year down below. And yeah, again, happy new year. Here's to 2024. See you later, guys. Peace.